And we're live.
Awesome. Hey everybody, welcome to RAGIN with. We've got a special guest this evening, but I'm kind of like stalling right now because I'm trying to add our Facebook group. That's right, we're going to actually just RAGIN on Facebook as well. Did I add it? Did I add it? Yes, I did. Okay, you guys. So here we are, raging with Nandor Fox Shaffer. He's got a campaign going on right now. This is episode 43 of Raging with. We'll be right back after our intro.
Raging.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Make sure that you are hitting the subscribe button and sharing this out to your friends. We are simulcasting to Geek Insider, Ragin AVC, Comics and More New Jersey, as well as Indie Volt. That's right. Hit the subscribe button and share it out because we are raging with Nandor Fox Shaffer this evening, and we're going to be talking about his creative journey. I am going to drop the card here and put you in the spot of honor.
Right.
Welcome, Nandor.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
We're glad to have you here too. Now, we're going to get into the tough questions, right?
All right.
The tough questions. The tough questions is what in the world made you get into comic books? Me, having started this journey about a year and a half ago, taking it seriously as a viable business option. I'm glad it's not something that I did in my youth, right? So what was your moment? What was the moment when you said, Nandor, will make comic books and create these worlds? What was that like for you? When did you do that?
So I did that. I had that light bulb moment, I guess, shortly after I finished high school. I was around 17, 18 years old.
Oh,
And
young.
yeah. I knew I wanted to be a writer. I knew I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to do something with writing. And in my early teenage years, I posted blogs. I wrote up different articles on like video games and comics and things that I was interested in. And people seemed to like what I had to say, at least, or what I had to comment on. So that kind of spurred me on to keep writing and to try to get better at writing and make my vocabulary more broad and things like that. Just growing up, and then as I was going to college, I knew I wanted to go in for creative writing. That's what I wanted to do. And I got tired of writing about um, other people's stuff. I wanted to write about my own stuff. I wanted to create my own stuff. So, uh, and I've always been a very um, I absorb a lot. So I read a lot. I watch a lot of film and a lot of TV, and I just absorb storytelling. I love it. I just, as I've grown up, I've learned to appreciate it, and it's made me feel things and experience things that have really moved me as a person, and have kind of changed the way that I've thought about things too. And that's something that really fascinated me and still fascinates me, if I could speak here, today. And so, uh, as I was entering college and I was in my first semester, was writing seasons. I was in the process of writing my first series, my first book, and that became seasons. And I finished the first story arc, and I knew I just knew this is what I wanted to pursue. I wanted to see where I could go with it. I wanted to take that leap. And so I stopped going to college and I decided to uh, just go full on with seasons and with creating comics. And I did research into other independent creatives. And this was in 2016, like around there. So about 5 years ago. And really before kind of on the onset of crowdfunding and comics and how that was starting to become something that you could actively kind of work in and do, and it's only grown since I've started making comics. So it's been it almost feels like, if not the perfect time, one of the best times to be an independent creator, because so many more people are doing it and so many more people are looking into those avenues and where it's actually a place that you can thrive in. So it really started there, and I just knew I wanted to be a writer. I just love storytelling, and it was just something that I felt compelled or like I had something to say, and that's where it all started.
Mhm. There was something that you said earlier about broadening your vocabulary, and I want to touch on
Hmm.
that because there are a lot of times when people have this perception, especially when they don't read comic books, they have this perception that it's all sound effects or ughs and pows and kapows and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, Try to smash through that and say, no, there really is a story arc in here. Do you have opinions about that? Like how people can, in fact, broaden their reading horizons and their vocabulary because of comics.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's kind of funny, and it kind of can segue into my campaign. But Stan Lee was one of the, I mean, he was a wordsmith. If you read a lot of those classic comics, you start to learn about just all the different words that he would use. And I know a lot of people, including myself, that's where you started to learn how to read or learn how to appreciate different words and adjectives, and learning about kind of how the vocabulary works. And there's a lot of people I know that started to learn to read because of comics,
Mhm.
and they just never left, because it was like the source of their childhood. And then growing up, they just started to appreciate it more, and they started to appreciate more mature stories. So uh really, it all kind of ties together, and it was something that you think, are comics actually that are they actually literature? Like how much how seriously can you take the medium compared to other like novels and screenplays and things like that. And the more that I looked into it, and the more that became fascinated with it, and this when I started writing comics, I especially found out how difficult and how um, precise you have to be. That's something about comics that are really interesting, because with a novel or with a screenplay, even, you could, just kind of keep going, and you don't necessarily have to worry about, how much dialogue you have, or how much space your words are taking up on the page. So you start to become really, really precise and exact in the words that you use and the things that you want to say on a page. And so it becomes this. Push and pull of balancing, art and writing. And I'm a very visual person, and that was something that I think that made me appreciate comics even more, because I love art, but also I love the blending between writing and art, and how you can merge those together.
Mhm. Um, so there was another thing that you said earlier where you said that you absorb a lot.
Hmm.
And I know that when we ingest the things that we see, what we read,
Hmm.
what we hear, and all that stuff, a lot of times as a creator, we have this thing where it's like the imposter syndrome starts to creep in, and you're like, "Oh, my ideas are crap. There's nothing unique here." Um,
Yeah.
how do you kind of battle that, being that you do try to take in so many things? There's so many things that influence us as creators?
Yeah, I'm actually really thankful that I have seen so many films and have read so much because it actually helps me create better. Because it's not that I necessarily have a mental inventory of all the stories that I've, really been absorbed in. But when I'm writing and when I'm developing an idea, it's easy for me to figure out if I'm starting to copy something, or if I'm falling into a trope that's really too predictable or too easy to figure out for the reader. And um, the more that I've been writing comics and the more that I've been reading and just growing up and reading more mature stories, the more I've been able to become a little more analytical in how I look at the story structure and how you can um, really the most one of the funnest things for me to do is to look at the rules of storytelling and try to figure out how to break them because I like changing up things and I like trying to embrace the medium in such a way that you could only tell this story through a comic book. And that's I think a lot of comic book writers should look at it that way, and they're trying to write a comic book story. So what are the tools that you have to really embrace that and to take it to the extreme of what a comic can do? So I like playing with structure, I like playing with page turns, I like playing with um, uh, artistic styles and how you can change the art to emphasize the story and things like that. So, um, kind of going back to the question there, though, it's more like since I've absorbed so much, it's helped me to uh, go, okay, well, this is starting to sound a little bit like this. What can I do in my story uh, to change it so that people don't think I'm just, ripping that
Right.
off or
Mhm.
copying that? So, and thankfully, uh, I when I watch a movie or read a story, if anything reminds me of something else, it bothers me. So I have a very conscientious mind on looking at what I'm writing about and trying not to do that because it would bother me as a reader. So I try to write things that I would find really exciting and that would be different.
I think finding that balance of our own unique voice and something that's kind of familiar without bonking you on the head and saying, "Oh, this is that," with a
Yeah.
different name. I mean, that's one of the hardest things I think
Yeah.
about trying to develop these new worlds.
Completely, and it's really difficult because I know when you are pitching like your book to people, and when people have asked me like, so what is your book like, or what, kind of like pitch your book to me. A lot of the time you'll hear people say, well, it's like this and this, or if
Mhm.
this met this, or if this and this had a baby, it would be this. And I find that sometimes aggravating because when people say that, it just makes me think about that. It doesn't make me think about their product. Uh, but I realize it's a part of how you sell something too. So
Mhm.
there's a blessing and curse to that. But so it, a lot of the time when people ask me what are my books like, or what's that story, I try to tell it in a different way. That way, they're not just thinking about this because I don't want them reading my book and going, "Oh yeah, he is just doing this, but that was better," because of
Mhm.
course, probably what I love is going to be better than what I've written
Mm.
most of the time, just because a lot of my favorite stuff is just really good stuff.
Yeah. So you said that you are a visual person. Are you
hmm
an artist as well?
Uh, I'm I dabble, I guess. I used to draw a whole lot when I was younger, and
Mhm.
I have a YouTube video on my YouTube channel um, where I show off a lot of my sketches that I did when I was younger, and I made this video called I drew an entire Marvel comic without getting paid for it. And I did when I was about, I don't know, I think 15 or 16. I looked at a comic and I had my sketchbook by me, and I did every single page, and I just kind of copied it, but I did it in pencil,
Mhm.
and because I wanted to learn about um, just like what does it take to draw a comic, because I was really just fascinated with that. So I it was like sort of an experiment for me. And I did the entire book, and it was awesome. I used to draw all the time, but I don't I'm not good enough to where I could, draw my own book or anything. There's so many better artists that I'd rather work with.
Well, the reason why I was asking is because a lot of times, from my own experience as a writer, I might have a scene that just pops into my head and I can see it.
Hmm.
I can see it in my head, and then trying to translate that into words. And
Hmm.
and some people, it's the other way around. They just have the words flowing out, and they really rely on an artist to bring that to life. Um,
Yeah.
how would you say your process is in that, when you're writing down your script?
Hmm.
Are you very kind of precise? You know exactly what panels, because you are a
Um,
visual thinker, or do you kind of give them a little bit more creative license?
it really does depend on the scene. I when I started writing seasons, I was a lot more meticulous than I am now. And as I continued to write the series, I was able to pull back a little bit, and especially after I met my artist, it was, and he was so good. I was like, well, as I kept writing the series, I'm like, well, he's going to know what I mean, or he's going to have a better idea than I'm going to have. So a lot
Mm.
of how I wrote the first story came from wanting to make sure that I was doing my part as the writer. And then I think when you get into a collaborative process, when you've worked with someone for years, you're able to kind of have a shorthand with that artist and with that creator, because you're just like, well, he's awesome. He's going to do it better than I could probably explain it. So I trust him to do it better. But uh, there are specific scenes where I will actually lay out the page on my own, and I'll send that to the artist, and I'll be like, "This is what I was thinking. This is how I think the panel structure should be, going from panels 1 to 5." Uh, and I will even write in each panel description, like this person should be in the foreground, this person in the background. This is what's happening. And so I can get pretty specific, but it's like when you have those moments where you just see it so clearly in your head that you're like, this is how the scene has to be. So you kind of stick to your guns with that point. But there are other sequences that I've found where I'm like, oh, I know the artist would just do better than what I could explain right here. So I just need to write a little short description and then go from there, so that doesn't hold me up in my writing process. But in the more like emotional scenes, and some of the more really specific plot driven scenes, uh, I do I do get pretty heavy in my description of how I think it should look.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you said you were a lot more meticulous before. That doesn't mean he's lazy or getting lazy.
Right.
I think that
Right.
comes with really finding a team that you've been working with, and to
Hmm.
what you were saying, having that shorthand is very important.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah,
said that,
because
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's because when you do find someone that you can work really well with, it just becomes this chemistry that you have, and that you really trust. You really do have to trust your artists at a certain extent, to where you're not always looking over the shoulder, because then you're probably not working with a good enough artist if you have to keep, critiquing things and changing
Mhm.
things on them. So you found the right person when um, you get artwork back, or you get layouts back, and you look at it and you're just like, oh wow, that's incredible. That's exactly what I was wanting. So, and I've had those with quite a few people. So it's been one of the best parts about the process for sure.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit about building your team? What was that like? Because nobody, unless you're doing it all by yourself,
Hmm.
um, comes out of the gate with a perfect team.
Right.
And and so what was that process like finding artists, perhaps that it was a different colorist, perhaps it was a letterer. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, yeah, what was that like? Where did you go and who kind of mentored you through that process? Because I'm sure you got a lot
Um,
of bad advice at the beginning too.
well, I wasn't. It's kind of funny when I think back to it because I didn't know anyone who knew how to make comics, and especially in my hometown or my area, no one there wasn't really anyone I could go to. There were a few creators and people that had made some YouTube videos that I looked at that I was like, oh, like they're kind of doing something similar to what I'm doing, but um, he- it, I kind of what I did, how I started out was I wrote the entire story, the first story arc for Seasons, and then I went on different art forums. So I went to places like DeviantArt and different groups, on social media, and tried to look at uh, artists for hire. I typed that in. I had no idea how you would actually find a comic book artist when I first started because I mean you don't it's not really something you think about all that often, and you're just like, "Wait, how do people find people? How do you do that?" It's a lot
Hmm.
easier now because of the years that I've been doing this, so I kinda know where to look, but, yeah, at the get-go, you're just kinda stranded there going, "Oh, where do I find people?" And, I found Anthony Gonzalez Clark, who's in the chat, I think, right now. He was on DeviantArt, and, I think I typed in something really random on there too. It was just like comic book art or sequential art or something, and I stumbled upon some of his work, and then I reached out to him, and we did like a test page, and for Seasons, and it was just like, yeah, this is great. Like, let's keep doing this. I did this is something I don't really talk about a whole lot, but there was one guy that I worked with really, really early on, um, a different artist that might have worked for Seasons, but we did a page and it just wasn't the right thing at all. It just was not how I wanted it to look, and then when I said something about it, he got really defensive about it. So I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. The farther that we go here, and that's something you got to watch out for. You got to watch out for people that you know, if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure things out, you want to work with people that um, will oblige you or can help you out with this process too. And Anthony knew a little bit more about where to find info on how to make a book and the things we could do. And I think it was him that suggested we put out Seasons for free. So I made a website and we had Seasons on there. We put out 2 pages a week where people could read it for free as a web comic and built it up from there. So and there are people like Jason Brubaker and different indie creators that we looked at to kind of see their trajectory and how they started to get eyes on their book. And I will say, um, my other book I did, my second book that I did, Lifeline, which is right over here, that was a really interesting process because the book, I worked with 7 different artists from all around the world, and each
Mm.
artist contributed a different chapter. And so, and it's dealing with the same characters. So I had to make sure that the characters were, you know, the same visually as much as possible to the artist's style so that when people were reading and going with each chapter they wouldn't lose that connection or that cohesion of this is where this character is at this part of his life and then he's growing older as you go and so that was really interesting because I brought all these people together on this one story and thankfully, I didn't know how well it would work out because it was such an ambitious thing to bring all these people together, but it did all fall into place, and it was something that I look back on, and I look at the book, and I'm like, oh man, I don't even know how I did that. Thinking about it now, um, I feel like I was more of a free spirit than I am now when it comes to collaboration because I just went out and did it, and it worked really well.
Hmm. So, have you used basically the same team from project to project, the different IPs that you've been developing?
Actually, no, it's been all different. So, with seasons, it's just myself and Anthony Gonzalez Clark. He does all of the art and the lettering, and then with Lifeline, I worked with 7 different artists, and
Hmm.
then worked with a different letterer for that book, and then for Manchild, different artist, different letterer. So, it's all different people. I really do like trying to collaborate with as many people as possible on different projects just because I just like making connections with people, and I find the more people that you work with, the more things will get easier as you go because maybe you're working on some book and the letterer you would usually use like can't do it or something. Maybe
Right.
they're tied up, or the artist you would usually use is tied up. So now I have all these different connections that I can go back on, and I can email that person and go, oh, that's okay, like you don't like I have someone else, and then I email that person, and they're like, yeah, I can do it. So I found that the more people I've worked with, the easier it is to hop to one project to the other, so that you're not just always relying on one person.
Mhm. Now, I want to hear a little bit about Lifeline because you said you were working with 7 different people. Now,
Yeah.
having never read it, I don't know if
Hmm.
it's more like a compendium, like a compilation of your stories and
Hmm.
things like that. Um, but when you think about a project like that, and you know
Hmm.
that you're working with several different people, do you write for a specific artist? Or do you write and then find them to match your word style?
Yeah, that's it's the latter there. So when I wrote all of Lifeline, and it's a I believe it's around 80 pages, with it's okay. It's around 80 pages of art, and as a graphic novel. So it's a full-length graphic novel, and um, I had an idea of the styles that I wanted for each chapter, and I would write little notes of like, okay, this one needs to feel, kind of dark and moody, and the color palette for this chapter should be this, and there's one chapter that's just all blue in the book, and there's one chapter that's just black and white, so it depended on the story. And so what I did was, um, I after finishing the script, I went to uh, the artist that I wanted to be the chapter one artist, and tried to find that person, and then we worked on that chapter. And then I went to the chapter two artist, and it was over a process of about a year, almost a year, that I was working with different people and trying to compile all this together. And and then I looked at all of it, and I read it, and I was like, oh, wow, this actually worked, because there was a part of me that was worried that it wouldn't work because going from one artist to another could be really jarring, um, and I wanted to I like anthologies, but I wanted to again, I like kind of breaking the rules, so I wanted to turn it on its head and do like, well, let's do an anthology book, but it's the same story because you follow this character as a very young boy all the way to an elderly man, and you follow him through the decades of his life. So that's why the art style changes. So it's to complement the decade, and also each chapter is told from the perspective of a different character, so it's the art style is there to complement that character and that character's perception of the world and perception of this person. So that's how I kind of worked around that.
That is a really cool concept.
Thank you.
Pretty unique. Is Anita, have you ever seen anything like that? Yeah, that's really kind of cool. So we are at the 30-minute mark, and we're going to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, let me just find the card here. So when we come back, you guys, we are raging with Nandor Fox Shaffer. We're going to be talking about seasons as well as his current Kickstarter. The links are in the show notes, so make sure that you head over there. Click his links. We've got his social media as well. Follow him everywhere. Just don't peek in his windows because that's weird. We're going to be right back after this. And for a 10% discount on your Gemini mailers, make sure that you go to Gemini Comic Supply. Use coupon code VOLT10. That's right. You can save some money. Who doesn't want to save some money? Save 10% on your Gemini mailers by using coupon code VOLT10. And that is courtesy of IndieVolt. Thank you, Varian Grant. We are speaking with Nandor Fox Shaffer. My dog is going to die, I swear. No, he's not. She's not. She's good. Episode 43. This is Ragin with. Let me drop the card here. And we are back. Hello.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about seasons because you have it front and center right there on your display. What is it about, and when did you start putting that together?
Yeah, so Seasons is a supernatural, very grounded, superhero-esque type of story that follows this young man through 1 year of his life, and as each season passes, his powers change. So it's a very character driven story, and it's this 1 year journey that this character goes on. So volume one is spring, volume two is summer, and then we have fall and winter left to go. So it's going to be a 4 volume or 4 part graphic novel series that we're doing with it. And we started putting it out as a web comic for free in 2016, and the first volume came out at the beginning of 2018, and volume two actually just came out. And I'm actually waiting for the rest of the books to get here so that I can fulfill them. Some people have gotten their books for volume two, but not all of them. So this one is as fresh right off the printer, right from the printer, and it's turned out to be a beautiful book. Each graphic novel is over 100 pages, so it's
Oh,
very
wow.
big.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very big. It's very, you know, content heavy, and it's something that if you like really introspective character driven stories and stories that take a character uh, on a very literal sense of growth or development, where you see that with each book, then you'll really like Seasons. And what's really interesting about Seasons is that because his power set changes, also the enemies or obstacles that he faces with each book change too. So each story has its own flavor and its own uh, sense of scale and scope, and some are more like spring is a lot more of a personal story, and then summer is more of a wide kind of blockbuster spectacle type of story. And then as we get to fall and winter, we kind of change and kind of look at things a little differently.
I'm seeing a little bit of a common theme here with your books between Lifeline and Seasons, and even with Manchild, where there's
Yeah.
personal growth involved. You're really getting into the heart of your characters.
Hmm.
Um, Purposeful?
Not necessarily. It's something that it's funny because I when I think of them, I think of them very separately. But when I think of the main character, I see a resemblance in just I really like taking characters and trying to um, force them to blossom or to change because as I've gotten older, I've changed myself and I've seen just how much that really informs the way you look at the world and how people look at you. And it just comes back to this sense of, where is my place in this world? And um, how do I navigate it? Because the world is such a big place. And the more you think about it and the more you think about the potential you have as a person to impact others, um, it just feels like an overwhelming sense of uh, weight and responsibility that you as a person carry. And because you have an impact on people in your life, and I've really seen that, and so many people have impacted me. So I find that just a really uh, interesting and deep dive into characters and relatability. I really like creating characters that people can look at and they can go, "Oh man, that's totally me." And it's funny because I've had quite a few people either email me or message me and go like why are you writing about me, and I'm just like I'm not, this is just these are experiences that I've had or that I've seen people go through, and so but it just informs me and makes me think, well, awesome, like this is something that people can really and this is a character that people can get behind and that they can see a little bit of themselves in. And I really like doing that. I like stretching characters and kind of breaking them and changing them.
Yeah, well, finding that emotional connection is so important as a writer because if they're not emotionally invested, they don't really have a
Mhm.
reason to turn the page, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, why would they care what happens to this person?
Mhm.
Because if they don't care about how they feel or what they're going through, then they're not going to care about that altering or the payoff for what that could be.
Mhm. So your work seems to be pretty heavy. Have you ever thought that I'm gonna write some, like fluffy fun piece and just for a change of pace because I mean when we write, we are emotionally invested too. Sometimes it's exhausting, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Have you ever
completely.
just for fun just do something wild and crazy? Maybe not even put your name on it. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Right. I've definitely thought about it. I will say, Manchild is the most fun that I've had writing something because it does tell two stories, and one of them is that Silver Age really superhero type of world and universe. So I get to uh lay off the weightiness of what I usually write about, and I get to try to have fun again. And that's actually something. Um, Not that I don't have fun with the weighty stuff, but I get to open up my imagination to think about not just what the character is feeling or what they're going through, but what can I show that will make someone smile. I'm really it's interesting because with the two stories I'm telling, going back and forth, because it is that back and forth of being a kid and being an adult. So when I get to the superhero stuff, I think about what's going to make the reader smile or make them laugh or make them just really feel like they're escaping reality. And so it's put me more in touch with stories that you loved in that, you didn't have to think about so much. Sometimes people can pick a story apart and it just ruins the imagination of the story if they're like, well, how does that work? And like, how does that make sense? Or that wouldn't really happen. And it's like, you just got to suspend your belief and really just like dive into it and enjoy it for what it is. And so I've been playing with that and trying not to be too uh, analytical and what I'm writing about with that portion of the story.
Mhm. And I am going to pull up your Kickstarter in just a moment, but
Awesome.
I did want to ask you about seasons because you have 1 and 2, right? And you said
Yeah.
you've got it's going to be 4 books
Yeah. We
altogether.
yeah we have fall and winter left to go.
Okay. And obviously, just because you have a Kickstarter going doesn't mean you stop work on everything. Is that something
Yeah.
that you're working on now, or do you even have another project? Because the follow-up question is, how are you keeping that all square in your head?
Mm. Well, to be honest, I actually have mostly the entirety of seasons all written. It's something that I got done um, when I first started writing the book. I wanted to make sure that I didn't break up my investment in the story, because I knew if I left it for a while and came back to it, I might not be the same person, and so I might not be able to complete the story the way I intentionally wanted it to be and originally wanted it to be. So I have Fall and Winter mapped out pretty detailed and ready to go. And then I went to Lifeline, and then this is Manchild, and then I do have other ideas for other projects, but I haven't um, necessarily figured them out quite yet. They're still in that process of kind of marinating and having uh, trying to find what is making me come back to this, because that's when you find you have some when I finally figure out what I want to say with my stories, that's when I know I can start writing them. So I'm in that process of figuring that out.
Yeah, I think we all have those voices in our head, and it's like, you get in the back of the line,
Yeah,
right?
right. Like I'm not, and there's sometimes where I'm like, I'm not ready to tell that story. Like that's something I want to do, and then I think I could do a pretty good job at it, but I'm just not ready yet. I'm not ready to go there. And so I need to write down maybe like the core theme of what that might be, and then just let it stay aside. With Manchild, it was really interesting because I came up with that shortly around um, around the beginning of like 2019, around 2019, and I wrote the first issue, um, but I let it sit for a long time, and because I was working on Seasons Volume 2, and I was trying to get that done and get that all ready to go. So it was weird having something that wasn't finished and going on to something else and then coming back to it. But I'm really happy I did that, because within that time frame of those months, I let it sit there, and I was able to write down notes and just thoughts that I wanted to touch on, and so I really let it sit. And a lot of the time, it is good to let things sit for a while, because
Mhm.
you'll wake up one morning, and this has happened to me, where I'll wake up one morning and something just clicks, and you weren't even really thinking about it, but you just started thinking about the story, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is what this is actually about. And then um I just think I'm so glad I didn't rush into this, because if I did, I wouldn't have had this moment.
Those are magical moments.
Yeah.
Definitely magical moments. So tell us a bit about man-child, because you said it kind of goes between like the child and the
Mhm.
adult. Can explain that to us a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So Manchild tells two stories simultaneously, and one story takes place in this Silver Age inspired universe. And there's the Monarch-Crier there, who's a superhero, and that's Professor Pilgrim punching him, and he's the villain of the story. Um, and then you see Rufus on the toilet there in the house, and yeah.
Did you
And
actually
so,
write that in your script?
well, no, it was actually when I was thinking about different variant cover ideas, different cover ideas in general, I just thought it was just hilarious that
Mhm.
like you could have this character reading a comic book in the bathroom and then have what he's reading like happen right outside his window. And I just thought that was a really
Oh
hilarious
my
moment
gosh.
that
Uh-huh.
yeah, you could you could
So
get people
so
with
an
that.
instance where the artist had a little bit of creative license and
Yeah,
and it
right,
worked.
right.
And it works.
Yeah, every time someone sees it, it does put that smile on their face, or
Mhm.
makes them want to talk about it. It makes it a lot more fun, and it kind of alleviates the core theme of what I'm going for with man-child. And it is this putting that word on trial, that idea of what it means to be a man-child, because it's a contradiction. I found that people are like, well, be a child at heart, or be youthful as you get older. You're only as old as your soul, or what you
Mhm.
think you are. And but then at the same time they're like, well, don't do that, that's
Grow up.
childish, or like
Yeah,
don't,
right.
yeah, or
First
Yeah.
time you
don't
jump in a puddle, everybody's looking at you like you're crazy.
yeah. And like you can't enjoy the things you used to do. You can't have fun with your friends like you used to as you get older, because well, I have all these responsibilities, and I just can't do that anymore, because that wouldn't be responsible, or it would be embarrassing to have fun. And I just
Mhm.
thought that was something that I think I've seen in my friends, and I've seen where especially when it comes to comics, they're worried about loving comics, or being so just absorbed in comics, because they're worried about how people might see them, or if they're trying to get a date. It's like your first date, it's like, well, don't mention that you like comics, because that might turn your partner off, or turn whoever you're dating off, because they think that's weird. And I just thought, I've heard people say that before, and I just
That's really
thought,
unfortunate.
yeah, exactly. I was like, why can't you be yourself? Or like, don't wear that t-shirt because, it has, a comic book character on it. Like, people aren't going to take you seriously, because they're just going to see you, and they're going to go, oh, well, he's just a kid. Like, he doesn't
Mhm.
know much. And being as young as I am, I think I've gotten that just because I am young, and people are like, well, he's just a kid. And so, I wanted to I wanted to change the overall feeling you get when you see that word. And there's a lot of people that are like, why did you use that word? Because usually it's kind of a derogatory statement. It's like, oh, he's just a man
Right.
baby, or a man
Mhm.
child. Uh, and I thought exactly like I wanted people to ask that question, because I wanted to change the way we look at it. And also, it's just the perfect idea, and that contrast of going like, you know, man and then child, and like two stories being told simultaneously. And it has the hyphen, so it has that kind of silver age vibe of, with these characters with hyphens. And it just fit. It was something about that really fit. And so yeah, like, you follow this superhero character fight this villain in this one story, and it's told in the way that Stanley would tell it. It's written in the way that Stanley would write it, because it is a dedication and a celebration of his work. And then also, it takes place in this modern day story where you follow Rufus Boston, who is a comic book nerd. He's a all time, like he's at the comic book store more than you are. He loves comics so much. He hangs out with his friends all the time. That's what they talk about. Um, but he's living in his parents' basement, and he's a virgin, and he's in his 30s, and he's just not quite there yet. He's
Kind of all of
behind.
those stereotypes that we hear about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's the perfect, specimen for people to go, well, you're just pathetic, and
Mm.
um but so, and that's something I wanted people to think about this character. But then as you read about him and as you see the life that he leads, maybe that will challenge your perception of, what that might be, or those stereotypes. Um, and maybe he'll learn things about himself that he didn't know, and things that he can, you know, just be better at, and look at his life in a different way. So it's it's that, again, that push and pull of holding on to things that you love, but not having those things that you love keep you down or keep you from um, uh, enjoying what more life has to offer, or where you become so absorbed in fantasy that you check out of reality. And there's a danger, because I've had those moments where it's like I would rather just absorb myself in the stories I love, rather than, really care about what's going on in the world. And I know more about the history of Marvel and DC Comics than I necessarily know more about, like American history. And it's like, well, that's kind of bad, but also there's this sense of abandon and just imagination that you get from these stories and these characters. And um, yeah, it's an investigation into all of that, because it's something I've struggled with, and I've seen other people struggle with too.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of funny with like for me growing up and when I was a youngster, like the AV people were like the untouchables.
Mm.
You didn't associate. They were the geeks and stuff like that. Now we're ruling the world and we're making all these worlds and creations and things like
Yeah,
that. So
exactly.
yeah, it's like suck it.
And yeah, totally. And a big part of why I wanted to touch on this too, and that it correlates back to Stan Lee, is he really suffered from imposter syndrome and insecurities about being a comic book writer, because that was at a time when the comics were especially not esteemed, and when they were not respected, and they were really seen to be very childish. And he had to push back on all that stuff, and he had to push back what he wanted to do, which he wanted to write the great American novel and write screenplays and break into Hollywood, and do the the grown up stuff. And I say that in quotations, but it's so interesting because all of these grown adults are the ones that made these comics that enriched pop culture and enriched the way we look at heroism and morality and things like that. So um, it just goes to show you that tapping into the fundamental kind of basics of what it means to be a human, or what to aspire to, that's not necessarily childish. That's something that you get a foundation when you're young and you're small, and then you grow into that as you get older, and it just informs the way you look at the world and the way you look at other people. And I love the idea of looking at superheroes in particular, because they're the better version of humanity. I mean, most of the time when you look at these heroes, you look at them and you go, "Oh, I want to be that," or I wish I could stand for what they're standing for. They help inspire you to be better than who you are. And so it's looking at that and trying to meet that standard. And that's the beauty of loving superheroes too, because they teach you things about yourself and about the world that you might not know. Or you look at this character that doesn't kill, and that maybe forgives someone, and as a kid you read that, and that really impacts the way you look at the world psychologically, because you can look at that and go, if someone does you wrong, you could remember that comic you read or that story that you read, and you can go, am I going to be the villain of the story? Am I going to be the hero? What do I want to do? Do I want to do what like Superman would do, or do I want to do what Lex Luthor would do? And it just makes you think about those things. And um, I think it really helps kids learn about what it means to be, uh, a helpful and kind and good person.
Mhm. Yep, and we're going through the panels right now. And I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to scroll up because hold on a second, let me find it. the one page right here where he drops the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you dedicated a page to this. This must have been, was this an impactful moment for you when you were writing
Yeah,
it?
completely. So this scene, this sequence here is actually what happened to me when Stan Lee died. So you see there, the caption says Stu Leeds died, and so
Mhm.
like in this comic, there's this version's Stan Lee. But his name's Stu Leeds, and in the real world, at the end of 2018, when Stan Lee passed, I was at work, and I was getting all these calls and texts from people, and I couldn't look at my phone because I was at work. And then I looked at my phone, and people were calling me, and I picked up the phone, and one of my friends called me and was saying, like, Stan Lee died, and I had no idea. And so it was this moment where one of your heroes died, and the world is lesser for it. It took me a while to process it because he's someone that was always there, someone that had always um, been in your life, and you think, oh, Stan Lee, like he's been around forever, and
Mhm.
you just kind of take that for granted in a sense because you don't expect that to happen, and then when it does happen, it reality sucks is what happens, and you're just like, well, this is an awful thing to happen. But then you back at his spirit and his legacy, and you start to appreciate it even more. And that's what I did. And I read about 3 or 4 biographies on his life, and that really helped inform the way the story is told, and what I wanted to do with it.
Mhm. That's great. Yeah, I mean, there are, when we have those impactful moments, it's kind of strange how it really sometimes it makes us pivot,
Yeah.
and do something. And I love how you were saying that, like with the man child, it's almost like just because we've grown older doesn't mean we have to grow up. And I
Yeah.
remember a
Yeah.
time when it was kind of funny. My son was a teenager at the time, and we
Hmm.
were just walking towards the mall, and I don't know what it was, but I was like, "Hey, hey, you want to hold hands and skip?" Because it was something that we hadn't done in like a decade,
Yeah.
right? And he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "All right, great." I mean, we were just two goofy people, and I was
Yeah.
surprised one that he said yes, and but it was so fun, and to the point that I can talk about it to this day, and it makes me laugh thinking about it.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
we need to capture more of those moments. Um,
Hmm.
so I wanted to ask you though, all right, about, because we're getting close on time. Oh my gosh, our hour went by pretty fast. You said
Yeah.
these are two stories being told simultaneously. How in the heck do you keep it straight, and how are we going to expect to kind of follow along? Do you kind of bounce back
Yeah.
and forth and things like that? What can
I,
people
I
expect in Manchild?
yeah, I do keep it because again, and it's something I learned from doing Lifeline actually. I think Lifeline really helped inform me on how to tell different stories, but still have it be really cohesive, and have it be understandable as you go through it. But with Manchild, you're gonna always be going back and forth, but it's not gonna be like a page by page basis. It's gonna be, every 4 to 5 pages, you'll be in this world, and then you'll turn the page, and then you'll be in reality, and then you'll read that for a few pages, and then you'll turn the page, and then you're back in the superhero universe. So I
Mhm.
tried to structure each issue and each book itself to um, really not necessarily hold your hand too much, but guide you along to where you're not, just always going back and forth, and you're just like, oh man, I can't keep track of what's happening. So that was something that was important to me, and I know as a reader how devastating that can be when you read a story and you're just kind of confused because you're like, no,
Right,
wait a
you're
second, like
popped out of one scene
yeah,
and into another, and it's
yeah.
like smacking you in the head.
Yeah, exactly. And so I made sure that each sequence is enough of a sequence to where it's long enough so that um, you aren't forgetting what happened and what the information, the amount of information you're getting from that um, will be memorable enough to where when you get back to it, you're okay and you're not. Just like, wait a second, let me go back and see this. And it was actually something I really purposefully, of course, wanted to do because that's what it's like to um, to read comics and to watch a film because it's really interesting. And the more I think about it, the more I think I'm really proud of what I was able to do with it because, you wake up in the morning, you go to work, you come home, you sit on your couch or you go to the movie theater or whatever for a few hours and you watch TV or whatever and you're absorbed in this story and then it's over and then you're back to reality all of a sudden and that's what this story does. So when you're reading it, you're gonna be like, "Oh, whoa! Like this is awesome. This is crazy. I'm following this, crazy adventure and these battles between these characters." And then all of a sudden, you're bam back to reality, and you're like, "No! Like I don't want to be here. I don't want to
Mhm.
be in reality. I wanna go back to this
It's like
exciting world that I
waking up
was
from a
reading."
really awesome
So
dream.
is it written like from Rufus reading about the Monarch-Crier and Professor Pilgrim, like, or is this something in his head and
That's a really great question,
but one you
and
don't
it's
want to
something.
answer?
Yeah, it's
Got you.
something that,
Okay. Okay.
uh, you, uh, you find out as you read it, as you read
Okay.
the series, that's the mystery. That's a big mystery of the story is, wait, how do these connect? Why are these
Right.
connecting? And so it does. I will say it does. I'm actually writing the final issue right now, so I can tell you that I know what it's doing and where I wanted it to go and all of that. So just trust me on it, and when you read it, you'll find little Easter eggs and find little hints of how these two stories connect.
Okay.
Very cool. Very cool. And so we are getting ready to close out here. And honestly, I'm looking at this bundle and I'm checking my finances because I'd like to get caught up with some of the other stories that you have. But
Yeah,
I mean, with this Kickstarter and everything going on, of course, you've got Lifeline and the other one, Seasons.
seasons. Yeah. Mhm.
Are those available anywhere else, or are you kind of driving traffic towards your Kickstarter?
Yeah, I'm really driving traffic here. I really want people to get them through here because it,
Mhm.
it just helps overall. And also it's the best deal that you can get with them. Because seasons volumes 1 and 2, they're both hardcover, they're both over 100 pages. And they're both going to be signed by me and have a book plate if you get the bundle. So you're getting this
Very
collector's
cool.
edition of the book. And then same with Lifeline there. So you're really getting I guess you could say like almost $100 of value, but only for $85 for this campaign. So um, it's a really great deal, and if people did want to just get seasons volume 1 or whatever, they can always reach out to me or go to my website seasonsthecomicbook.com
Mhm.
and they can contact me there and we can go from there. But yeah, I really would push everyone to get all my previous work from this Kickstarter.
Go to the Kickstarter. The link is in the show description, you guys. Make sure that you click the link and share that out with your friends. So as we close out here, I just want to scroll up and take a look at these covers
Yeah.
again. Really nice. Tony Harris, Nick Pitara, Tom Riley, Welby, and there's an option to get all 4 covers as well, you guys. So right now you're
Yeah.
at 97 backers. You are just over, well, I mean, you're over halfway there, 12 days to
Yeah.
go. And really, guys, the importance of if you've already backed it, whoops, what happened there? If you've already backed it, make sure that you share it out with your friends. That's really important. And tune in to the replay because we really get insight into the different stories and what Manchild is about. Nandor, if you were going to give new people coming into the industry one piece of advice, what would that be?
Save your money. So really, especially if you're a writer and you want to make comics, every dollar counts, every penny counts. So make sure that you save your money, because there are going to be expenses that you're not going to think about when you start out. And you have to pay. If you're the producer, if you're the writer, you're going to be paying the artist, the letterer, the colorist, production, advertising, things like that. So really, it's important to save your money before you start this venture out into making your own story. And because it takes a lot of money to make comics. I'm not gonna lie about that. It's like it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort. And if you have a cushion there for yourself, you'll feel a lot better about what you're doing, because you won't feel like you're just going at this and without direction. You can really budget yourself and make sure that you're on the right track.
Definitely. And on that note, you guys, thank you for tuning in. This is Ragin with Nandor Fox Shaffer, episode 43. Thank you for tuning in. Again, hit that subscribe button because we are simulcasting to Geek Insider, Ragin, AVC, Comics, and more, New Jersey, as well as Indie Volt. And we thank you all for tuning in if you are on the live stream. And thank you if you're watching on the replay. Hit the button. Follow Nandor on the social media. Just don't peek in his windows. I said that before because it's weird. Hey, Nita.
Yo.
Final words.
Just throw my dudes.
We're out of here, you guys. Nandor, thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate you.
Thank you.